Hello, Kelly.
Hi, guys.
Hello, everyone, joining us for episode 18 of A Measure of Marketing, all about branding from a graphic designer's perspective with our guest, Drew Hughes. Welcome, Drew.
Hello, Kelly and Hayley. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. I'm excited for this conversation. We was just talking about how to make the topic a little bit smaller than it possibly could be. We could talk about this for days, I think.
Easily, yes. I mean, branding is such a massive arena, and you've talked in the past quite a lot about self-branding, and this is just graphic designers. If you've got a toolbox for branding, graphic design is obviously one tool. It's a very simple tool because it's literally the visual outcome of the brand statement. But a lot of people would just, in the old days, we used to be called logo designers, but a logo just starts the process. Everything else behind that logo and what it stands for and how it got there, that is the brand. And then that brand mark rolls out even in the way you dress, how you present yourself to people. And the whole of branding is a universe in itself.
Yeah, definitely. So for small business owners then, I guess imagine someone's just starting out, or if they're in the very first few years, they've got a logo somehow, it's been created, maybe through Canva, and they've got an idea of like colors that they like and things like that. And they come to you and they need some support in terms of bringing it all together, making them feel more professional, more consistency. What's the typical request that you get from a small business owner at that stage? And then how do you help them through the next part?
Gosh, that's a massive question.
Go straight in.
I wasn't expecting that. When we spoke about this earlier, or a few days ago, you said that was the assumption that people come to me already with the logo in hand, which often, by the sounds of it, they haven't used a graphic designer. And absolutely, there's AI, there's Canva, there's clip art even. But yeah, you would be surprised. I still get sent clip art logos and said, "Oh, I like it." Well, yeah. Anyway, so at that point, I often say, right, great, thanks ever so much. You've already got an idea there, and you've got a logo going. How committed are you to that logo? And what have you actually rolled it out onto? And how much of it can we unpick and now make into a more sophisticated logo? And it's not me trying to make money out of the extra hours I'd have to spend doing that, but it's a very hard start point when you've got something that literally is clip art. Then you've got to commit to that and roll out a brand manual and packaging and lorry idents, etc. Just from something that's, if it's a bad start point anyway, and it's going to be the header brand on anything that you sell, you're kind of onto a sticky wicket before you've even started. So sometimes it's that when I've asked to do packaging, there is a vague logo in place, and I've said, well, look, can I develop that logo a bit on now, because packaging is your first iteration of how the public's actually going to get this. And then at that point, are you open to that? And often they are. And I've been quite surprised that quite large brands are still willing to adapt. And in the end, that becomes their logo or their brand mark, because they never really thought about it at the time. They were just thinking letterheads and email headers. And even business cards. You'd be surprised how many people still want business cards. And I must have designed 30 of my own business cards in the last 30 years. And I don't believe I've ever handed one out at all. I'm too embarrassed as well. But anyway, so yes, I think so. Starting from that point, if they're open to the conversation, and then what happens is, if you say, what I normally do is, if somebody comes to me and wants a branding or a logo for, it's going to be essentially, recently it was people installing fire extinguishers into offices. And I said, okay, what's the biggest picture this will go to? Oh, it'll go on our 2-door Bedford vans. Okay, and I always say, right, well, I want to visualize it on the biggest thing, the smallest thing, a web holding page, just to give you an idea of web presence. And then I always do a really wacky thing right at the end, saying, dream big. So often I'll stick the logo on an airplane or something and say, why not? Who knows? Amazon started, it was a 10-minute job for somebody as a freelancer, and it ended up being stuck on everything. And that poor bloke, I know who it is, he must look at that constantly and think, oh, damn, if I'd had 5 minutes more. I could have just slightly sophisticated the arrowhead. You know?
Yeah. Yes, I guess it depends. You do have to think quite far forwards, don't you, as a business owner on these things. Like like that, having that logo, I guess we just think website can be quite small, or it's on a profile picture somewhere, but actually to make it sustainable, that evergreen approach, to work with someone like yourself and really pick it apart and think a lot bigger, that also supports, I guess, marketing strategy as well, and
Absolutely.
vision setting. Like, yeah, it's really important to do that.
I think it's important to think of the 10-year plan or the lifetime plan, and logos in general will get adapted or re-looked at every maybe 8 years. So yes, it can be sort of transitional, but always think way ahead. And if you never get to that goal, so what? At least you're trying to step that way.
Yeah.
You know, rather than keep it right back to. So sometimes if a client is printing on a certain print process that is like flexo printing, it's almost like lino printing. It's like cutting out with a stencil and stamping it. And you have 3 colors and they can't overlap. And it's really basic. But if they design their whole logo and their branding ethos based on that, then that's so inward looking, because the next pack they do might be a big seller and they might be able to make more sophisticated printing process and come up with a world dominating pack. Could be the next Coke. So always think, you know, big.
So is it best for a business owner to think about any printed materials that they're potentially going to want, either like paper based, or if they were printing on t-shirts or bags, and then go backwards to digital? Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, that probably is the best thing, because obviously digital, it's just an RGB presence and anything works online and everything looks brilliant. And the first thing I do when I'm presenting stuff to clients, if I'm doing it face to face, is I'll show them an RGB file, which is red, green, blue makeup, which is what all photographs are made of. And that's what you get on the web. And then I'll just convert it to CMYK, which is the print process. And straight away it dulls it by 20%. And you can just see their faces going, oh, yeah, that's the printed reality of your logo.
Ah, okay.
So yes, absolutely. And print hardly comes into it. Not many things, apart from packaging, would end up in a print process. So RGB and really high saturated colors. But again, you still have to apply the basic rules of logo design if you're doing the branding of the logo. Simplicity is king. Don't make it over complex. You know.
You find, Drew, because working with small businesses, when they start out, they have an idea of what they think they are, what they offer, how they help, what they do. Within a couple of years, they kind of have to be quite agile and kind of shift, because they realize that either their audience wasn't quite right, or they realize they're doing something completely different to what they first started with. Do you find you have clients come back to you and say, okay, well, what we started with now is completely different? So there's this kind of aim big idea of like a 10-year plan, but most of the time they kind of don't know where they are after a couple of years.
Or they've gone down a surprising sort of cross at a T-junction and I didn't think we were going to go that way. Yes, but that shouldn't really affect the logo at all. And if you've noticed, I don't know if you watch The Apprentice, but whenever they get people who aren't graphic designers to instruct a designer designing a logo, it's very pictorial. And they always say, well, if it's a ship company, let's have a ship on it. Or let's have the sea or a mermaid. But if you look at the real classics like Orange, well, EE now, Coca-Cola, any of these brands, Adidas, anything big, there is no graphic representation of what their product is or what their company is. It's much more subtle than that. So a good logo or branding should completely outlive its limited start point and should be applicable to just about any iteration. So I won't let someone let me design them into a corner. That would be a real disservice, you know.
Yeah.
So I always stick on an aeroplane or something to say, look, you know, just it could be out there.
Yeah, I like that. Don't design someone into a corner. Yeah, and that's just a long-term perspective, isn't it, as well? And your experience too is to bring other brands to the surface to get people, to business owners, to think broader and follow people that have done it already, and the brands that are working. And
absolutely, I always say to clients, particularly if it's a field that I don't know at all, I say, first of all, can you tell me your 2 or 3 top competitors that you consider your competition? Send me their web link and let me look at their stuff. Then totally separately from that, and not with that hat on, can you then send me things that logos, colors, dress, whatever, something that you find beautiful or that you think works for you? And often there's quite a difference between what the competition is and what they think they should be doing and what they actually like. And you've got to find that middle ground of, you've got to have an emotional resonance with what you design or what you'll be selling as your brand. So I quite like an open brief like that, where it's, give me your inspiration. Let's start from your dream points, because that's absolutely going to serve into how I'm going to do the design.
How important is it to look at competitors, follow them, versus do something different to stand out?
I'm not a massive one for violating, which is what happens in packaging when you do a shelf violator. You come up with everyone else's black background, you're going to do a turquoise one. For the sake of it, I don't like violation, but what I do like is a point of difference. So learn from what everyone else is doing. There's often a really base reason why a certain product range is one color or one graphic delivery. So, have we frozen?
No, Hayley disappeared.
So sorry.
Hi, so sorry.
So I had a client recently, very recently, who he's doing a certain product in an arena where every single package in the whole world, when I went and did some research, was a black base. And I said, okay, there's such a strong reasoning for this that you'd be stupid to violate it. However, we can play with it and dial it back a bit, but you've got to have that level of black in there, because that's obviously exactly what people perceive. Same as most toothpaste products have a white base. Well, obviously people want the whiter teeth they can.
Yeah.
And somebody brought out a charcoal toothpaste, I think it was Arm & Hammer, and Colgate tried it. And obviously it's a black product, and they put it in a black pack. And it wasn't the best seller for that reason.
Yeah.
So in a way, it really helps my job and your job, because play into those strengths that are already out there. Don't try and buck it just because it's taken for granted. Because to get taken for granted, you have to do a lot of legwork in the past to get to that point.
Yeah, definitely. Hayley, any questions now you're back?
Sorry, my internet. I might have to do a snip. I'll do a snip. No, I think where do you start, Drew, when small businesses come to you and they actually haven't got an idea as to what their branding should be? Because I appreciate people have certain colours that they like. That's usually their go-to. Oh, I like blue, or I want it to be red. And often in marketing that we touch on that kind of consultation of, okay, well, what your purpose and the vision and the mission and all of this. But I know with branding, it goes so much deeper, and it's kind of imagine, what animal you'd be, or what's your emotion, or what, what's your, the brand value in terms of, and all of this. What's your process for trying to help someone and consult with them to pull out the information you need to inspire them to think about their branding and what they do?
Well, generally, particularly in England and certainly Europe, we're in an advantageous position where we have a very visually aware culture, and people are really image-based and visual. And so it's very rare that someone comes to me with a complete blank canvas, or I just don't even know where to start, because they definitely do. They're so opinionated, which is great if they're not too opinionated. But no, I think the challenge is, well, to help steer them. But often, the minute I'm talking to someone, I always have a pen and paper in front of me, and nearly always, straight away, an idea comes into my head, and I'll just sketch it down. And I won't tell them I've done that, because you pay me a lot of money just for that, and it's done in 2 minutes. But that's it. And I know And even when I always do at least 5 completely different design routes to explore different aspects of the brief, they nearly always go for the one that I sketched down when they were first telling me about it. It's obvious, and if that's the clear idea, and then I try and sometimes steer them towards that, which is, you know. But if that felt right to me, then instinctively, then hopefully straight away it resonates with them as well.
Yeah, and it's how you're connecting, isn't it, with the client in the moment as well? Like that's the
Definitely.
Yeah,
it's funny because years ago, when I worked in agencies, you have account handlers, and they will go into the clients, pick up the brief, and they're the sort of public interface of the company. And they didn't used to let us designers out because we're in the back room wearing jeans and being really naughty and listening to loud music, and were considered sort of a bit monosyllabic. But when I started then going to clients myself, oh my God, for the first few years, the level of responsibility that I took on, thinking, I've met that person and I want to please them and can't let them down. And that took me a long time to get my head around, because not having that go-between just exposed me to the sheer sort of terror of having to present your work directly to the client and watch their faces either light up or crumble. That hasn't often happened.
but I've worked in corporate roles where we had a design team, and I wasn't an account person, but I was just in the marketing team, and I didn't realize we had to work with the designers in really get to know them and get to know. I sat with them to understand how they designed, even though I didn't do it myself or fully understand it, because we were just asking the wrong questions of the other people. It was at a university, the other like lecturers and the support staff, and just not translating it over. So that direct contact that you would have with clients now, like you say, they can tell you and it's literally coming out of your hand onto a piece of paper.
Yes, I think, and that's part of the process. And what's the problem is, as a small sort of freelance trader, when you present the work, I have to keep saying to them, this is not personal. I really don't care. I've done it 40 years in October. It doesn't matter to me what you say. It is your opinion. And I'm often right, but that's, But please, and also, if there's 5 designs and you instantly hate 3 of them, tell me. It's so much quicker to get rid of those 3. And I understand where you're coming from straight away. So in the past, I've gone in and pretended there's a team. And whenever they've picked a design that they absolutely hate, I said, oh yeah, that's the junior, they're rubbish. And it's still me, but it just sort of, it separates them from the blame. That's the problem. I'm thick-skinned. I've done this so long and I've been beaten down so many times, and I still believe I'm right, because I am. It's the only attitude to have. I'm not arrogant.
It's just different variations, isn't it? If you think of it that way. Yeah, it's so subjective too.
But if you can build a relationship with the clients and they realize you are only trying to help them and get the best out of them, then brilliant.
It should be a fun process too. I always feel like it should be fun, and like should be able to like play around with it and have a good conversation about it as well.
Totally. I mean, the way it's going now, because everything is so much more remotely based, is I have to send often whole PDFs of presentations, and I break down my thought process and how it got there, maybe a few images, lots of notes, and then how it ends up with design. I can't think for a minute they read that. But I'm very cheeky in the way I write things. And if sometimes an idea came into my head because I looked out the window and saw a dog going to the toilet on the grass, but that brings up something for me. But I tell them that thought process because it might resonate. And that's how I got there. So I want them to come on the journey with me,
Yeah, they might find that inspirational.
Yeah.
They might find that inspirational also. So so we've got a business owner then. They've got colorways, they've got a logo. I find, as I mentioned before we hit record, that a lot of small solo business owners, they go straight to social media, and if you look over their feed on Instagram, for example, because that's the most visual one, you see it change, and then there'll be a random post with totally different colours, and there'll be something else that's very different, and random GIFs that are appearing here, there, and everywhere. What is the best advice that we can give as marketing experts, graphic design experts, to a small business owner to keep consistency? Like, why is that important? And what can they be doing as individuals to stay as consistent as possible?
I guess the elephant in the room would be the brand manual or the guidelines Bible. And loads of large companies will utilize this. And I've worked with brand manuals from Disney Corporation that are 300 or 400 pages long.
Oh, wow.
So I was doing some Elastoplast packaging, and it was for the Little Mermaid, but the manual was 400 pages long about how she has to appear, how the shell has to be, what colors. And I said, I can't possibly read this, so I just made it up as I went along and said, yeah, I've read the manual, because it was just too much.
Yeah, that's extreme.
Ridiculous. But so I'm asked to do a brand manual, 20 pages maximum. I don't believe in putting in do nots, because it's negative, and it's pretty obvious, surely, to say, this logo works on purple. That's it. Don't do black, don't do green, don't do red. Well, obviously don't do it, because it works on purple. So just put in the positives. Don't patronize the designers. But in many ways, sometimes, even for small businesses, I've done a one-page crib sheet to say, look, this is your logo, this is how it works. Could you please try to adhere to these basic rules? And it helps them, you know.
So you're designing their visual branding for them, and then you put it together in a couple of pages, and so that they can follow it going forwards forevermore.
Yes, they don't often ask for that, because they see that as another cost. But what I will do, if nothing else, is provide them with a whole load of JPEGs and PowerPoint ready files and social media ready files that I've formatted, so that I know they're consistent, and said to them, ideally use these. And then if you suddenly come up with, oh, someone's asked me for this for a press release, or I need it to work in a landscape format across the header of something, I said, please, by all means, get hold of me. I won't charge you. It will take me 5 minutes, but I'd rather keep the consistency. And I try and be their kind of brand partner or graphic designer in their pockets. I don't want to rip them off. I just want them to be not beholden to the brand, but to be caring of it and its usage.
Yeah. And how do you, what type of conversation do you have with small business owners about the importance of brand consistency and that longevity?
They don't often ask that. I think by the fact that I normally stamp it on quite a few iterations, I think they'll come up within the first couple of years to show them anyway. I think they've already understood that actually this works quite simply. I'm not into very complex branding and lots of bits that come together. It should be quite a simple, and whatever happens, I always show it in black and white and color as well. I have one client that still uses a fax machine. Incredible. But there's sometimes there are instances where black and white or monocolor is all they can do. And I believe anything has to work in that way as well. So often the designs I do are relatively simple, but it's pretty obvious how to roll them out. And yeah, so I haven't really come up against any problems with someone mutilating one of my designs. And I'd let them know if they were. I'd just write to them and say, do you think this is appropriate? And then
what pitfalls do you see, Drew, when you've kind of done the work and you've kind of supported people, and obviously I know you're the kind of, in their pocket to help them, but what pitfalls can people kind of look out for if they're just starting? What is it that you see where you think, oh, they shouldn't have done this, or they shouldn't have done that, if only they'd have done this?
I think brand consistency, but when it actually manifests is often when the client, I'm not expensive, but obviously I'm more money than a printer who will supply a design service to try and get some more money across that way, or somebody very local or just starting. So they often come to me for the initial brand mark, and then they'll go to somebody else to roll it out or to use it. And at that point, the inconsistencies happen.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me thinks, well, you get what you pay for. But yeah, that's difficult, because you don't want to patronize them, and you certainly don't want to look like you're asking for money. But I do think a level of, I have got one client who I've said to him, almost use me as a design guru, and I won't charge you, but every time you're thinking about going a different direction, let me know and let me just see what you're doing. And also I hand over all the assets as well, so that there's no worry. I don't charge for the copyright. That design wouldn't have existed if they hadn't commissioned it in the first place. So I'm very open and transparent about, here's all the masters. If you decide to go with another agency, I'll hand it all over. It's all very design friendly, and I'll try and help you. Why wouldn't you? You know,
Yeah.
you've got money for this.
Yeah. I think it definitely is I see it's the consistency that falls.
Yeah.
Even as a marketer, when I've helped people with messaging, they tend to kind of lose the tone of voice, and that the kind of brand-led messaging that we've worked on so much. But then also you do see it in the branding, be it a social media post or be it in a piece of content. And I think that's such a shame to lose that consistency. And most of the time, I think it's small business owners who've got so many hats on that they just try and do everything, and they forget, oh, I've got some branding guidelines. Oh, I've got a tone of voice document. If only they just stopped and referred to it, or sought clarification from you or me or whoever. You know, it can be so brand damaging to either get excited or to be doing so much that you don't stop and just consider each time, every time you post, every time you put out an image or anything, is this in line with our branding guidelines? Is this true to the brand? And it's something that I know Kelly and we do our best to advise clients, is to protect that brand and to keep it true to itself.
I think it's because it's such visualization is such an easy process, because we're all visual. We've all been taught drawing up until the age of about 13 at school. It was actually on the curriculum. So everybody is an artist, everybody is a designer, but not everybody's a good one. And I think the problem is, yes, you might pay some money up front, and you think, why am I paying these hundreds of pounds to somebody to tell me how to draw this or how to cut this up and stick it on Instagram? Oh my goodness, I can do that myself. Yeah, you can, but not necessarily very successfully. And although it's a small thing, each time you're eroding your sort of core messaging, and I think you are breaking down your own brand. It's self-destruction. You know, don't fight to it.
I think unless you've got a level of skill set or the knowledge to give it a go yourself and be confident with it, it's just one of those things, isn't it, that you just think actually you're better off not trying, you know, dabble with something else, or focus on what you're there to do, is be the MD or be the CEO, you know.
Do your job. I've had this discussion so many times with people saying, if you took your car to a MOT place, we have a rough idea what's under the bonnet, but they're the specialists. You don't question when they say the head gasket needs fixing. You say, how much? Everything you do as a designer, or probably a marketeer, is questioned, because we all have a smattering of knowledge about this.
Yeah.
You know, why blue? You know, why not red?
Yeah.
Because I've made a decision, and it's based on all the knowledge that I have, and sometimes I have to actually unpick what was in my natural learning. I have to unpick it and write it down to say, this is why I did it. But I know I'm right, but I have to then explain why I'm right, you know.
Yeah.
It's annoying sometimes. So.
And I guess just having, everyone's got so much access to
visuality.
Yeah, like Canva, Instagram, all of it, haven't we now? That some people do think that they can easily do it, but actually it becomes more complicated if you sometimes try. Like I've worked with startups, which I love because it's just a fresh base, but literally going through each channel to say, we'll start with your website, what photography do you need and which orientation and where will your logo go, and then let's move to Instagram. And you only need like a few different versions of square templates, some portrait ones for stories, like what text will you use, will you align it left or right or in the middle, like position it here or here. And you only need those small amount of graphics almost, like this templated space for yourself. across each platform, and you're pretty much there then it's just down to focusing on the messaging and making sure that that stays consistent along the way, or really strong, or you're developing that. The graphics remain the same across.
Exactly. I think it's a toolbox of branding, and marketing is one element of it. Graphic design is another element, and so is advertising. The easiest one of all of those to get right is the graphic design, because it's done and it's finished, and you either start all your posts or your website, whatever, with the logo, or you finish it. And it only has to be in 2 or 3 formats. Job done. Don't muck about with it.
Yeah.
Then worry more about getting your marketing messaging clear and consistent, and then how the advertising plays into both of those. But I'm doing the easy bit. Then you lot got to take it on and make it run with it.
Yeah. And then if you've done all of that hard work and you've got the templates across the standard platforms that we're all using these days, then you come across a new opportunity and you need a roller banner, or you're doing some Facebook ads, or you are printing on the side of an aeroplane, whatever happens, you can just come back to you and say, okay, I need this now, and you just take it and transform it into that next.
You'd really hope so, because I can break down my costs to an hourly rate, and things like changing a format to go on a 6-foot banner will take me an hour. So I'll say, look, it's going to take me an hour, for goodness sake. Give me 30 quid, 50 quid, get me a coffee. But if you don't keep going back to the original source, you're going to keep diluting your brand mark, and you're going to muck it up.
Yeah.
Don't dilute.
Don't dilute.
No, keep your.
Keep it concentrated.
A lot of places have a brand agency that they keep going back to, but then of course the costs become inhibiting. So I worked in an agency where just for me opening a file to put onto send on an email was going to cost the client, say, a flat rate of 100 quid. And the clients were saying, well, come on, if you're our brand custodians and you hold all the artworks, some things you actually have to give us a break and say, I just asked this because somebody in marketing suddenly wanted it for a poster, for goodness sake, it's relative. Yeah. But I do think, just think about the investment in money. For 50 quid to 75 quid, I sometimes invoice for that level of my time. Get that banner right, because that banner could introduce you to 2,000 new sales.
Yeah,
it's my investment.
Exactly it, isn't it? Yeah. And I think people forget that the visualization or the graphic design is a way of communicating. And I think people just see it as a backdrop, or they see it as some nice colors. And it's like, no, actually, before anyone's even had a conversation with you, they're going to see your website or that banner at the exhibition, or they're going to see your logo in the exhibition floor plan, and
both emotionally engaged with that.
Yeah.
And it is true, a picture paints 1,000 words. We are all, since caveman times, we're all visually based people. Words are actually, we've got 286 countries. We all speak a different language. But visuals cuts right across, doesn't it?
Yeah. And an event, essentially, you want to be so busy that you've got a queue of people and they're looking at your artwork behind you and it's saying everything for you. They know how to get hold of you if they haven't got a chance to talk to you there and then. So that's the importance of it. But like you're saying, Drew, about the cost is way up. Like, if you did get 10 clients from a particular piece of artwork, how much is that to you versus that 1 hour? Like, you have to weigh it up in that way, like the value that you provide,
that investment.
But
as we all know, in marketing in particular, when you're doing new business, you don't know necessarily for 2 years how that investment actually plays out. And that's a very tough sell when we live in we're in the Amazon Prime generation where I want it, I could get it this afternoon. And that's not what we're selling. We're selling long-term strategy and the relationship. And, you have to wait for the payout. It sounds like a really good fob off to say, keep paying me. And at some point you might make some money, but it's not. This is the investment you've got to put in.
Yeah, brand is long-term, isn't it? It's that it's always on, and you don't know which channel someone's going to actually finally then go, that Instagram reel, because I've seen it so many times, or I've seen them across the website on LinkedIn, at an event and I know that person just from their colorway or just from their logo, and then that just hits and they make a decision to spend some money or work with you, or they tell someone else about you. Like you can't measure that. So
no. And even if you look at those websites you visit where it says, how did you hear about us? Sometimes at the end there's a quick survey. And then you think, oh gosh, how did I hear about you? And it's osmosis almost.
Yeah, Karen 2 years ago.
So many different sources, which is great. That's how a brand should work. It should be subconscious. You know?
Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing, is to get across to people, just going back to the long-term value, in the kind of the Amazon way of thinking, or I want it tomorrow, I want it now, I need it now. You know, that's such a sales orientated way of thinking, that I need the sales, I need the leads, I need the opportunities. But without that investment of stopping and thinking, okay, I need to think about my brand identity, and need to think about my top level messaging and how I'm helping these people and who these people are, you're never going to get those sales. And I think, well, I find that it's only at that point when the leads dry up and people have got nothing that they go, okay, I now need to invest my time. And it's like, but if you'd have just done this either from the off or within the first 2 years, you'd have been way ahead of yourself. But it's almost people don't really understand marketing or the fluffy side of it or the branding, because they can't see anything for it, as we say, for at least 9 months to a year. So I think it's hard for them to justify the spend or justify their time to invest in you. And I don't always have to get that across to clients, but I find that that's the point when they come to me, where they go, okay, I don't know what else to do now, because
they now see I think the other, particularly in your line of the game, where I'm producing a physical outcome, there's going to be a logo or a pack at the end of it. So I'm a bit more like a factory line. Your job, as I said, first of all, you can't quantify it necessarily anyway, if you can't say what happened over the last couple of years. But I think what I have found through experience is the more you have to justify to a client why you're worth it, after about 2 of those conversations, I think, I'm never going to be worth it to you. You really aren't going to see this value. And then I push them to some of the freelance websites where I'm competing against a company of 20 people set up in Indonesia who are a 20th of my cost and will give a full service result. It's horrific, but if taste doesn't come into it, but at that point, you have to learn to let go as well and just say, you know, you don't understand, gosh, it sounds really arty-farty, but you don't understand my value. You never will. Therefore, the relationship has to finish. I divorce you. You know?
Yes, I let you go. I release you. And picking up on what you just said then, Drew, it's made me remember how envious or how much I admire graphic designers or brand consultants who have something to show for what they do. Because actually, as a marketer, it is so hard to use any kind of visualization or any kind of matter, any kind of stuff in a case study or anything when it comes to marketing. And yet you guys, you can put out, oh, I did this roller banner, oh, I did this logo, doesn't it look great? And it's like, yeah, it really does. And you've got something really brilliant to show for it. And I've got to wait about a year before I could create a case study. And even then, people might not see it.
Get a B-roll of what we do, just me on the laptop again, me on the laptop again.
I know, it's just, that's a really hard one for you, because a lot of it is, you're under NDAs anyway, you know, and you can't necessarily discuss what's going on. But I do find that, I mean, in a way, that it completely devalues me, because I'd like to think when I used to go into agencies and have the odd interview, or when they don't give a monkeys if they like me or there's any resonance at all. They simply look at the work, and if normally they like the fact I've done big brands and I get the job anyway. And part of me thinks, oh, but I dressed up and I came across as really likable, didn't I? They don't care. It's just not important. So I'm devalued in that way as a human being. But you two have to sell yourselves as human beings.
We have to sell ourselves and then just hope for the best.
It's a lot harder for you.
It is.
I don't often feel sorry for marketeers, but I do today.
Thank you, Drew.
You brought out the nurturing in me today. Well done.
I can quote you on that. I'm going to keep that in my back pocket.
Oh, thanks so much for the conversation, Drew. I have one last question though. You know how for all of our other episodes, you've got a mug of coffee and you've listened to us in the background. Are you going to listen to this one in the background at home as well?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that one.
That would be weird.
It's a bit like unless you, if you do some editing and cut out some of my rambling, brilliant. Then I'm listening. But otherwise, no. It's just going to be. I might as well talk to a mirror, you know. Yes, I will. I'll put some special coffee on just for you, and it'll be caffeinated.
Yeah.
This morning I was trying to share our last episode on my Instagram stories, and I could hear my voice, and I was like, "Get it off, just get it off, get it off." It was horrible.
Just
always
remember,
the way, isn't it?
every quick decision. How many times have I done Instagram posts in the last week and made a spelling mistake? What is wrong with me? Just you throw it out there. I'm just going to get it done in 5 minutes, but it's there forever. People, just consider your brand and how you come across.
That's a very good last closing statement.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Drew.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who has listened. And yeah, tune in for episode 19. That's to follow. I don't think we have another guest. It's me and you, isn't it, Hayley?
Yep.
Yeah. Fab. Yeah, and like and subscribe or whatever.
We need to perfect that, don't we?
Yeah, we'll do it another day. It's fine.
Do it now. It's your brand. Come on.
I'll do it now. Too much pressure. Thanks, Drew.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.